Hello and welcome to Lindholme Lakes. I'm here today for two reasons. First one, we're going to look at two really simple methods that are applicable to any commercial, easy to use, guaranteed to catch you some fish. And secondly, we're going to take a look at Middy's brand new 5G rods, both the feeder rods and the pellet waggler rods. So let's have a look at the pellet waggler first. So I'm lucky enough to have seen these floats actually throughout their design, and Lee Thornton designed these, and they're called the Stubby. And what they actually do, you can see they've got a lead on the end and it's slightly taken away from the body as opposed to loaded like a normal one. They land incredibly softly. So that splash that used to be associated with fishing pellet wagglers, a lot of places now the fish have become, they actually spook away from that. But these floats, and I've used one actually, they're absolutely fabulous to land softly. So we'll be using these along with the new 5G pellet waggler rod. Now this rod casts between, I think it's 5 and 15 grams, which is absolutely perfect for this lighter type of float. So before I actually start fishing with this new Middy 5G rod, let me tell you a little bit about it. It's made using liquid carbon technology, which gives it a seamless, flawless action that doesn't lock up. Basically you can keep pulling at the fish, you're not going to rip the hook out or snap the line. Furnishings wise, it's got really nice SFA guides which stand off from the rod, which are ideal when it's raining or something like that, because the line doesn't stick to the rod and doesn't impair the cast, so that works perfectly. It's also got an anomic handle, which I don't really know what that means, but it really is very comfortable to use. This is the lightest pellet waggler rod in the 5G range, and this one will cast between 3 and 15 grams, so it's ideal for the smaller waggler. There's also the Trinity waggler and the 5G Plus, which are better for sort of more distance work or heavier wagglers. Anyway, that sort of sums up what this rod's all about. Right, so before I actually get fishing, let me explain a little bit about the pellet waggler method, and let's just make it as simple as we can so you can understand it and how easy it is to fish. Firstly, this stubby float, it just sits either side of two float stops. You put these on the line on the wire loop, you pull one on, put the float on, then put the other one. The beauty of these is that you can adjust the depth up and down to whatever you want. Hook wise, well, we won't bother with a hair rig, nothing more complicated than a pellet band and a pellet. I used pre-tied, I tend to use these are Middy's Extreme Carp hooks, are incredibly strong. There's a good selection of hook length lines with them, 6 inches long, and they're fine for pole work as well, but I use these. Now, the only critical thing you need with a pellet waggler method is a really good catapult. We have that because you're going to be constantly firing out pellets around the float. Some people find it easier to cast out and then fire pellets at the float, but you can do it the other way around. It depends how the fish, react on the day. The only other thing I'm very often asked is, what line do you use pellet waggler fishing? It always seems to throw up. Because obviously you need a strong line, but sometimes you need to cast a long way, and heavy lines don't necessarily cast that far because they're that much heavier and they drag the float. So I go for around about £5. This is 5.2. This is Middy's M-Tech, and this is the perfect line for this and feeder fishing. It's strong, it's robust, it knots well, it doesn't kink easily, it sinks. Especially if you put a little bit of washing up liquid, and we'll get to that later when we use a feeder. But it's absolutely fine. It comes on a decent sized spool, certainly more than enough to fill 2 reels, and I can't fault it. Anyway, they're the components. It really is simple. Let's do a little bit of fishing. Oh, so there we are. That's the first proper bite I've had using the new Middy stubby waggler. What I found out about that is it definitely works better if you attach it directly to the line in a loop. And it works lovely, especially now the wind's dropped here. It really does land quietly. It isn't the biggest fish in the world that I've got on, but you can see that liquid carbon design. It really does give a smooth sort of play in action. And yeah, that's not the biggest fish, but look at that. It really is a perfect action for a pellet waggler, for a light pellet waggler rod on a commercial. I'm only using an 18 hook, so we'll be a little bit gentle, but the fish is kicking hard, coming towards the net. And the rod's taking all the lunges out of it. Lots of power up there in the middle, look, piling a bit of pressure on now. Yeah, very impressive. I like the 3G rods when they came out, and the rods really have got better and better since then. Look at that. That really is an anti-lock in action. Yeah, very impressive. Right, let's get this one in the net and we'll go for another one. It looks like a big F1. Which it is. We'll pop him straight back in. So, like I said at the start, this rod will cast between, I think it's 3 and 15 grams. The float that I'm using is pretty light. I think that's about 5 grams. But you can see this rod will fairly whip it out. That is hugely impressive, hardly a splash, and that's quite a distance for any pellet waggler rod. You're going to bite straight away there. So, like I said earlier, sometimes it pays to feed and then try and put the float on top of the feed. So let's try it that way round. Out go the pellets. Straight on top of the float. No, it's a busy method, like I said at the start. It's quite a simple method, but it's just a matter of being busy. You don't need a lot of bait, you just need to be regular with it. The feed and cast, whilst it's flat, you can see if any fish come to the pellets because they'll swirl on them. So while I've been fishing the pellet waggler, I've been given these, they're called snack attacks, and they're a type of pellet. They're adrenaline, currently still working on them, and yeah, they're really interesting baits. So there's one there. It's very soft, it's full of liquid, and you can hook it up really easily, and it's not coming off, but it's incredibly light. It's almost like expander light. It looks very, very impressive, and yeah, I've caught a couple of F1s on it. Very good. I'd really like to give them a go on the pole, and I can see that when they come out, yeah, I can see a lot of anglers wanting to get to these. I think in venues where you get a lot of liners or a lot of missed bites, and the fact that that's soft but stays on the hook is yeah, hugely impressive. Snack attacks ooze liquid flavour. Today I'm using chocolate orange, but there will be a whole range of different flavours. Anyway, I'm going to carry on my fishing. That's snack attack. So let's turn our attention to feeder fishing, and this is Middy's 5G distance feeder model. No, it's not broken, I haven't smashed it or trodden on it before we start fishing. It's actually configured to be 3 rods in one. Very flexible tool this. Let me show you how it actually works as 3 different rods before we start fishing with it at its longest length. Firstly, take the butt section, put it in the top carrier section, and incidentally it does come with a couple of quiver tips, this rod, and you have an 8-foot rod, ideal for down the edge, sort of feeder in the margins, that sort of thing. Stepping up, put the middle section in, butt section in that piece, and you have an 11.5 foot rod, which is absolutely spot on for, I would say, probably 80% of your commercial fishery work. This rod will actually cast up to 80 grams as well, which is very impressive. Most commercials you're going to need 30, maybe 40 if it's windy. On a bigger reservoir, somewhere like Boddington, you might go up to 45, but this rod can handle the weight. Now, if you find yourself into a headwind or you want a real long cast, it comes with a dolly butt. I don't know why they're called dolly butts, but basically this can give you another foot and take you to 12.5 foot. So for long casts, this, you just put that in, and you can do it actually on the banks. If conditions change on the day, that's what you do. Just a quick tip, when you're casting heavier feeders and you want to go a long distance, put the feeder, before you cast, put it round about in the middle of the rod. That is where you can compress it easier. The more compression you get, the further you're going to cast it. Right, that's that about the rod. Let's start and have a look at the actual method itself with a couple of the component parts, and believe you me, there's nothing simpler for anybody to use than a method feeder. Actually fishes itself, and whether you're new to fishing or a world champion, makes no difference with a method feeder. You are equally as good with one of these on the end of your line. So what do you need? You need the method feeder itself, you need a hook length and a bait. It really is as simple as that. This is an adrenaline wafter, and today I've matched that with a size 12 Middy Q-curve hook, and what that does, that critically balances it just above the bait. So the bait sits above the pellets like that, fish comes along, eats the whole thing, and you get the bite. This is a 30 gram flatbed method feeder, just heavy enough to get you a really good bite, and it also casts really well. The bead just attaches the hook length, and for hook lengths I tend to go for, again, these are pre-tied, they come like that, these are size 10, they're absolutely perfect, they don't let you down, they're always the same length, and it's a damn sight easier than trying to tie them yourself. So the other thing is, how do you use like the Middy compactor? I'll show you that, but before we get there, Middy's compactor system, you get the bead, the feeder and the method mould all thrown in, so money saver there, and they work perfectly. So this is what you do. You can do it in two ways. If it's deep water, fill the compactor with pellets or ground bait, put your hook bait in the centre, push the feeder over it, nice and firm, turn it over, and done. It's like that. You can see the hook bait is buried inside. The idea for deep water bin is that gets to the bottom like that, then breaks down, and that's perfect for deeper swims. If it's really shallow and you want the bait off a little bit quicker, you can probably use ground bait for that. If it's shallow, it does come off a bit quicker, but you put the hook bait in first, fill the compactor, same thing, not too firm, you push it down, out it comes, ready to cast with, and you can just see that that's in the method and all ready to use. Then you just cast it out. I say it's helpful if you can cast it in the same place twice, but by and large it fishes itself, and if you're just starting match fishing or any type pleasure fishing, this is a great method to start with. It really is. It works every time, and it'll work on any venue. There isn't a venue it won't work on, and there isn't really a fish, especially carp, bream and tench, that won't go for this. It really is a great method. Anyway, I've talked it up enough. Let's see if I can actually make it work now. Oh, we're in. It feels like another F1. So obviously we've changed to the distance feeder rod, the 5G distance feeder rod. And what you're looking for from a feeder rod is high loading when you cast, which you've seen. This rod can definitely cast a long way, and no flat spots. There's no need to be a flat spot where the quiver tip meets the top of the carrier section. And yeah, as I suspected it would be, it's pretty good. In fact, it's faultless. Not the biggest carp in loco this. In fact, it's probably another F1. I think the carp have proved a bit difficult today, but we'll stick with it. Now it's having a bit of a go. Yeah, this isn't a very big fish, and this rod's capable of so much more. We'll see how quickly it tires this F1 out. Yeah, impressive stuff. Right from the 3G range. Since Middy came up with that, the rods have got better every year, and the 5G looks to be carrying on in that, you know, with that happy effect. So, in fact, they're probably the smallest fish in loco. Good nick, mind you. Probably the smallest fish in loco, and one of the biggest, but you know, it's a fish nonetheless. Anyway, we're popping back. So I'm going to carry on with fishing without the use of cameras. So summing up, what I would say is Middy have progressed the range up to the 5G. It is very, they're like this fluid carbon they talk about. The rod has got there's a lot of feel to it when you catch a fish, and yes, they cast. And really, I would say that Middy have actually bettered anything they've had before. So there isn't really much more I can say to that. If you get a chance, go and have a look at them. They're out, I think, in the next couple of months. The whole range is available, so take yourself off to your local shop and have a look. Right, I'm going to get on with my fishing now.